our parent church, it was like this wonderful breath of fresh air. It felt good. It felt fantastic. Richard was doing flower readings on Friday, which are amazing. So he not only works with the energy of you, but how you can imbue it into a flower, and you can take that flower into readings. Are you doing any more readings while you're up here this time?
I would have space for one this afternoon, then I have to fly out tonight.
Okay, okay. And I have last week's program, which is very interesting, because I'm going to be introducing our wonderful Dr. Reverend Richard, and I have nothing about what he's going to be doing. So you're going to have to introduce yourself, and I know we have a workshop today at 1 o'clock, so you have exactly a half an hour to talk. So are you ready?
I am.
Okay, let's welcome. Yay! Oh, you've got a chanting going here.
It's so enchanting.
As they say, enchanted.
Enchanté.
Do you think there'll ever come a time when scientists will invent a stand for a microphone that doesn't go?
You're an engineer.
Sounds like the microphone is snoring right now. So my heart to your heart, and let us just stay in that heart space. I first want to acknowledge CCL for these amazing programs. If any of you have ever put something together editorially or sat down at a computer and kind of taken a lot of data and put it together, I just admire the thoroughness and the completeness. This is a beautiful thing that comes out, and a lot of times we don't recognize all the work that goes into something behind the scenes.
Starting at 6 o'clock Sunday morning.
6 o'clock Sunday morning. And the other part I want to acknowledge and recognize is all the programs that you have. Because you can look on the calendar, whether it's in the insights or you can look in here and you see all these wonderful offerings in different things. And it's just like when we want to engage in spirit, some of us love dancing, and that's how we connect. Some of us love earth energy, Mother Earth. Some of us meditate. It's so different. And this charter of UCM is so vital and so vigorous. I just have such love for you, for your enthusiasm and your commitment to the work. I also have to say that when you say let the light in, you really do. There was quite an amazing statement, but like Reverend Dr. Arlene said, you know, change is inevitable. There was a wonderful saint who I really enjoy. His name was Paramahansa Yogananda. And one day he was being chauffeured to a place where he was to lecture to about 2,000 people. So he's in the back of the limousine and he's quietly meditating, and his entourage is kind of around him organizing their stuff. And he looks up from his meditation on the way to this great big lecture and he says, "So, what am I supposed to lecture about today?" And they were horrified. They were horrified. Said, "You don't know what the subject is?" He says, "Yes, that's true," because he knew spiritually that he would be prepared. So in the same way, when I was preparing to speak to you today, I was wrestling with, what am I going to talk about co-creation in spirit? And for me, you know, having done spiritual work now for almost 30 years, you know, really assiduously working on it, on the one hand, I have such great admiration for all of you that are doing the work on the ground, in the trenches, that, you know, all of the reviews that I've read from the minister who put in their renewals, it's just such an amazing work. And for me personally, this growth in the heart has been such an amazing path to see such dedication. So the co-creation in spirit, when I was wrestling with what today to say to you today to help us to empower ourselves, is to recognize one of the greatest lessons anyone ever learns is that you really are a conscious co-creator. Now, having studied for advanced degrees, I learned the art of using many syllables to convey what you intend to say, and so I call it a conscious co-creative collaboration, which is just a fancy way of saying we are actively co-creating together. And Reverend Dr. Eileen and I were talking on Friday. And one of the things we talked about is, who is in what role at what time. And at this point in time, I'm the president of UCM, and I'm serving a certain role in a certain way, in a certain aspect of the growth and process of what UCM represents, because UCM is us. That's who we are. The church is you and I. It's not the building, it's you and I. So maybe the next president represents that energy, and the next president represents that energy. So I wanted to read something to you that our Reverend Bob Hofstetter put out the other day. And I found it very interesting because it was an article put out by Reverend John Lawrence that was published in the 2003 spring issue of the UCM Quarterly, but it was written by him in 1968 when UCM was celebrating its 50th anniversary of incorporation.
He was my sponsor.
He was your sponsor?
Wow.
So I'd like to read this to you because we're about to celebrate our 100th anniversary of incorporation. This is very timely. In honor of Reverend John Lawrence, we are reprinting an article he wrote for the UCM magazine in 1968 that is still appropriate today, and this was printed in 2003. I feel that most of us are not sufficiently aware of the true value, depth, and wisdom afforded by the protecting arms of our mother church, the universal church of the Master. We are apt to take for granted the stabilizing, unifying establishment of a united church body. Since I have recently had the privilege of serving as a trustee on the church board, I have had an opportunity to see firsthand dedicated work and deep concern of the official body of UCM. In these times when many are downgrading the ministry, we are justifiably proud of the firmness with which our church sustains its high principles. UCM is not merely a ministerial fellowship, it is a church in the full sense of the word, and with a growing lay membership. UCM was organized some 60 years ago, and has been legally incorporated for half a century. And yet I feel its finest days lay ahead. There is nothing like an idea that has found its time, and this is most certainly true of our particular church. People have never needed so much as today the scientific certitude that true religion augmented by genuine mediumship can provide. And imagine how powerful you are as a minister. I mean, you can do mediumship, channeling, and intuit the presence of spirit right in front of someone else when they know for a fact that that is real, that they really are spirit and physical in the same moment. Imagine the power that that ministry has. Yogananda said that as you increase your spiritual practice, your subtle energy vibrations goes out to all creation. So Reverend Lawrence continues. The breadth, scope, and range of spiritual ideas and the individuality of spiritual expression are, I believe, unique with UCM. The universal church of the Master provides for us all, both ministers and congregations, a spiritual home that is truly American in tradition and Christian in spirit. Our UCM textbook, a new text of spiritual philosophy and religion by the late and venerable Dr. B.J. Fitzgerald, Doctor of Divinity, is a superb study and guideline for people everywhere. Let us all in this golden anniversary year of incorporation rededicate ourselves to the high principles that our mother church holds aloft for our edification and guidance. Let's not leave it all to the board, but rather let us fill ourselves with something of the zeal and enthusiasm that sustained Dr. Fitzgerald and continue to sustain those who work for the welfare and the growth of our church. The tenets of UCM are very cool. And having had the opportunity to, be with UCM as a minister, and as a board member, and as a president, I've been able to see different facets of how UCM works. Being able to read the renewals of the ministers just gets to my heart. Like some ministers say, I don't have any money, but I still go down to hospice twice a week and serve for a couple hours. Or I can't afford to pay my dues, but God bless you for what you do in UCM. And here's $25 to help support what UCM represents. And these are people who have dedicated every ounce of their life to what UCM represents. Now, I've heard, for instance, in some of the evaluations that came back from our conference, that every once in a while I hear someone say, well, this is too Christian, or this is too much emphasis on Christian. And I just wanted to emphasize my opinion. It's only my opinion. But my opinion is that when we talk of beings like Jesus, that Jesus was the guy's name, but Christ was his title. A title. And that the word Christian is not so much related to a religion as it is to a consciousness statement. A consciousness statement. Yogananda himself wrote a 2-volume set called the Second Coming of the Christ. Yes. Whereas if this were 200 years ago and you and I were talking about Christ returning, we'd think of the bearded white dude and, you know, wearing a sash and saying, yo, dudes, here I am. But now, when Yogananda wrote about this, he talked about the principle of the Christ, not the person, but the Christed principle that is alive and awakening in all of us. And to me, again, these are my opinions, is that is what this era of inner transformation is the possibility of the awakening of the inner Christ in all beings, you and me. That within you already is pure. There's nothing to purify. As Yogananda, I keep quoting him because I just dig the guy so much. He said, you cannot be any closer to God than you already are, but you can reveal that closeness. And so if you go to the land of the Maya, Yucatan, which I've been taking people there every year since 2005, and I stopped around 2012. And we would study these ancient sites, right? And they were all very cosmologically oriented towards the stars and the rising of the galactic center. And there was all this great knowledge of this awareness of the rhythm and the harmony of the universe. Well, the word Maya actually came from the word Mayab, which meant the chosen ones. But it doesn't mean what you think. It means they chose themselves. So the word Maya is a consciousness statement. So in that vein, you are all Christians. You are all Mayans. If you talk about the Buddha, everyone is a Buddha. So in that sense, you're all very Buddhist beings. And I know a lot of times we embrace words like God and goddess, masculine and feminine. And we tend to genderize that which we feel, which is the spirit. If you look at it, if you live in a oneness, then on the higher levels we're androgynous, we're both. If you look at past lives, and there's so much research beyond what you know as a spiritualist, because a spiritualist person who develops themselves already knows about past lives. Yeah, it's already true. We'll wait for science to catch up one funeral at a time. Which usually is what happens, right? But you know that there's a continuation of life after life, and that we've been male, we've been female before, that we've had past lifetimes as father, mother, son, daughter, uncle, aunt, and that this process of life continues. So we go back to the theme of this sermon today, which is co-creation in spirit. If I could leave you with one idea, it would be, you are so powerful that you can create any situation, any circumstance, any event that liberates you from illusion of separation from that which you seek. And you read great scriptures that say, you know, the kingdom of heaven is within you. It's not somewhere out there. And that another person that you meet in your life, I feel personally that everyone you meet in life is somehow pointing the finger towards God. And that's in you. Within you. That you are that powerful. So what would happen if you knew you could not fail? What would you do? What would you do if you undertook some risk or something you want to attend to, and you thought, there's no possible way I can fail at this? What would you do? Would you take it on? So now, the reason we as ministers in UCM encourage mediumship and channeling is not for the fascination like Uncle Joe is here and he smoked a pipe and he wants to tell you. It's to help you realize who you are. I'm sure that many of you have had readings before, hopefully with Reverend Dottie, and she brings through this amazing being Ma. And it's not for Ma's purpose, it's not for Dottie's purpose, but the reason for having a channeling or a medium is that that person who's doing that work is helping to empower you in your sacred path. In your sacred path, not their sacred path. Because the nobility of service work is what UCM is all about. And again, I repeat myself, when I go back to having read these renewal reports about how these ministers are so dedicated to their path, every ounce of their mind, body, and spirit is dedicated to helping other people, and then some of them say, God bless UCM. I'm so glad you exist. I'm so glad you're there. And so, here am I, the president du jour, the president of the moment, right? And my role has always been twofold. One is to help us to realize that the way we can help anyone else is always to evolve ourselves. Because by evolving and growing from within ourselves, by admitting to the purity of spirit that already exists within us, those subtle energy vibrations do go out to all creation, not just this room, but to all creation. And secondly, education, that we educate ourselves, both qualitatively, that is, developing ourselves spiritually, developing our intuition, and our psychic and intuitive abilities, because the higher sense perceptions don't work in the same way as the five senses. So when you develop your higher sense perceptions, it may be a little awkward or confusing, like, well, I feel this, but my rational mind says this, and that's what happens when you start to awaken the chakras. And the other part of education, the first part is qualitative, spiritually advancing yourself and awakening. The other part is education itself, both in how a church operates, how to minister, bereavement, counseling, but also science. Next week, July 8th and 9th, the California Institute for Human Science is having its annual summer symposium on consciousness and health research science in the field. And I'm one of the presenters.
Wow.
Because
Bravo. Awesome.
I've been with the Institute since 1992 when it opened its doors and just had 3 students, and I was one of them. And I'm now lead faculty and on the board of directors. And you're going to see leading edge researchers who are presenting their data scientifically. So this last week, I've been teaching a form of healing for 18 years. And we did some verification this last week on a device called the GDV, Gas Discharge Visualization Device.
Wow.
Basically what it does is it measures the light coming off your fingertips. So you have 8 fingers and 2 thumbs, and then it divides that light into portions of the body, just like you would in acupuncture or meridians.
Wow.
And then the computer puts it all together and paints an aura over a figure that would look like your aura, but then it interprets what is the strength or weakness of the glands, the organs, and the chakras themselves.
Wow.
So what I'm trying to tell you simply is, when I'm talking about education, is there's a lot of science also in the world that is showing that the spiritual nature, that subtle energy research is real, and the spiritual nature of the human being is true. So it's not meant for you to say, okay, well, CIHS is going to start teaching these courses in biofield research. Maybe. But it doesn't mean you have to be scientists. It's just helping you to become aware that the mass consciousness of this world is now more and more aware of the interconnectedness of all things. Around the 1850s, religious texts from around the world started to be translated into other languages. This unification of knowledge started to come forth more and more and more, so that we could say, well, what is Jainism? What is to be a Druid? What is Native American wisdom for the Lakota Sioux? How do they do it in Bali? And so the idea of bringing forth all of this knowledge and this education, both spiritual and strictly educational and scientific, is a manifestation of spiritual co-creation by you. By you. And you could say, well, Dr. J, I'm sitting in a sermon in CCO, what do I have to do with this? Because it is that collaboration that happens on a spiritual level that then manifests in the physical level. The same way that the true human aura is the combination of your chakras, Sushumna and Ida Pingala, that holds your 60 trillion cells in space-time. The true aura radiates you. You don't radiate the aura, because the aura is you on a higher level of being. Isn't it cool?
That's very cool.
Isn't it cool?
Yeah.
Because you're both. It's two sides of the same coin. And so what UCM stands for, as far as I'm concerned, is the development of our spirituality and education. And we're doing it through the website, we're doing it through Facebook, we're doing it through our own collaborations. And you are as much a part of that creation as I am. You created me, I have created you. And now in what is called the Maharishi effect, where two or more are gathered, 1970s, 7,000 people came to the Transcendental University Maharishi Mahesh Yogi to meditate on world peace. The next year, there was a 72% reduction in violence worldwide. So the theory is that the square root of 1% affects the population. Translation, if 2 of you are meditating for peace, it affects 400 people.
Wow.
If 7,000 of you are meditating for peace, it affects 4.9 billion people. What I'm saying is, you and I are co-creating in Universal Church of the Master this bow wave of energy that's going out to all creation, because we are unified in spirit. That's what us represents, US, unified in spirit. So as we are consciously saying, yes, I have the power to co-create. I have the spiritual power to bring a Reverend Dottie into my life, a Reverend Dr. Eileen into my life, a teacher, a mentor, a metaphysical master. You think I'm teasing? Masters. Who are guides. And what does the guide do? Do they go in front of you? They only open the door. They only open the door. And then what do you have to do?
Walk through it.
You have to walk through it. Even the Dalai Lama said, the spiritual growth and understanding cannot be given to another person. This is something you have to do for yourself. So when charters like CCL exist, they exist in order for you to empower yourself by awakening the Christian, the Buddha, the Mayan, the inner Christ within you that you already possess. And you're just listening to opinions, my opinions. I wrote a book on the chakras, and the very first thing in the notes from the author says, you know, these are just my observations. Why? Because I want you to resonate the chords of your heart in what works for you. There was a wonderful saint by the name of Vivekananda. This guy lived to about the age of 37. I think he passed in 1902. Turns out he was one of the advisors to Tesla. And Tesla, when Einstein was asked, what's it like to be the smartest man in the world? And Einstein said, I don't know, I'll have to go ask Tesla. So Vivekananda said, if you're a Buddhist, I'm here to make you a better Buddhist. If you're a Presbyterian, I'm here to make you a better Presbyterian. If you're a Methodist, and so on. In other words, you and I all have a different perspective. We can say, this little widget right here exists, but if I describe it, I have to describe it from how I see it. If you describe it, you say, well, I saw it like this, but we're looking at the same thing. So every one of us has a unique way of expressing spirit. And that's fine, because it all leads to the same place. Oneness. Only oneness. But we express in duality. Yes, no, off, on, up, down, masculine, feminine. But holding that duality in the unity is what goes towards the oneness. And if you hold in your heart, not here, not just the head, but if you hold in your heart that purity of love, if you really love yourself enough. And I wrestle with this sometimes. I think, oh gee, you know, I'm going to give a sermon. I don't know if I can really touch people or reach them. I'm not sure. Because that little chatter is going to happen anyway. But if you can say, you know, yes, my mind is chattering, but I surrender to my heart. What do you think is going to happen?
Mm-hmm.
What do you think is going to happen? Because a lot of people say, well, I don't have the skills that Reverend Dr. Arlene have, and I don't have the ability to bring people together that Reverend Dottie has. That's not important. Every one of you is a beautiful, finely tuned musical instrument. But there's a harp, and there's a trumpet, and there's an oboe, and there's cymbals, and there's drums, and we're all different, but we all harmonize together as one beautiful orchestra. And when I get the opportunity to speak to you in CCL, I think this is one badass orchestra. I see you thriving, and I've heard the stuff about, you know, survival and will the charter remain, and I hear all that, and my fervent prayer is it's all in God's will. Meaning, as we surrender, you're not surrendering to give up. You're surrendering to give in to the purity you already possess. How could you be separate from the Creator? It's impossible. So when we gather together on Sunday mornings, it's not just for Sunday morning like, well, I did my job. I went to CCL on a Sunday morning and I'm done for the week. It is our constant endeavor to be a good person, to have a pure heart, to be harmless and to be compassionate and to be loving. And what is expected of you, just be authentic. If your musical instrument is a harp, play the harp. If your musical instrument is a trumpet, play the trumpet. Whatever that is uniquely you has brought you together in the co-creation of spirit in this place, in this time, in this setting, because it's perfect for you to be here. So I started off with my heart to your heart. I love you all very much. And my hope, my prayer for you is that you will continue to allow yourself, to give yourself permission to be the powerful being of light that you already are. And that you manifest the change in this global world, this era of inner transformation, by allowing your unique note, your unique song, to come through clearly and completely, and let go of fear, let go of doubt, let go of trepidation. Great saints have said, you're here to do something awesome. Every one of you is. You're not here to impress others, though. You're not here to compare yourself to other people. The yogis say, in the end, it's between you and God. It's not between you and everybody else. So your work is to play that note from here. Don't worry about how much you know or how much you don't know. That's not important. It's more important to be authentic here than anything else.
Yes.
So I want to repeat something. I know you've heard this. Have you ever given or taken lessons on giving speeches? Tell them what you're going to tell them, then tell them what you told them, right? I mean, it's so Toastmasters, right? But it's really true. But the emphasis of today's sermon is co-creation in spirit. And the point I was making is, when you remember this sermon today, if you could remember one thing, it would be, you have the power to co-create any situation, any teacher, any circumstance, any event that will liberate you from fear, doubt, trepidation, lack of abundance, any problem. Because as a soul who also simultaneously has a physical body, you're an embodiment of the Christ in this. Only temporary. Only temporary. And all you have is that moment. And in that moment you can decide, I am that creator. I am that person. I have that power. I choose to be authentic. I choose to live my life on purpose. From here. From here. And you'll do just fine. Okay. Thank you, everybody.
What's your class about today?
Oh, the class today. Yes, thank you. I have to get out the thing myself. It's called Cycles of Consciousness, Rhythm of Time. I'm going to talk about two things. One is the yugas, which is a 26,000-year cycle of consciousness that has been looked at by different cultures. The Greeks call it the Iron, Bronze, and Silver Age, and so forth. And I'm also going to talk about the Mayan calendar. But both of these were created by the ancients to talk about cycles of time when we would become more conscious and less conscious. So it's a way of saying we're looking at our ancestry that was able to say we would go through periods of incarnations where we would be awakening and less and more and less. So I spent a lot of years studying what is called astroarchaeology. And so we're just going to have a fun time. I've got handouts. So if you want to sit in on a nice afternoon from 1 to 3, I invite you. Okay?
And what is this? How much does it cost?
It's $20 or 2 people for 30.
There you go. $20 or 2 people for 30.
And now I want you to stay there, and I want to ask the congregation something. Okay, are you ready? How many UCM ministers do we have today? Please stand.
Stand.
Everybody.
Everybody.
Thank you so